But yeah, what I won't doubt ever is what Jim Flanery will do with his program and what Coach McDermott will, like, they both have plans for their program, and every year it's always, oh, what are you going to do without this player? What are you going to do without this player? Well, life goes on, you move on, and then in 2 years we'll be asking, oh, what are we going to do without that player? So it's just a cycle of life. It's how it goes. Sad to see all these seniors go out. It's definitely an end of an era for Creighton basketball, both on the women's and the men's side.
You're listening to the Blue Jay Breakdown.
And welcome back into Blue Jay Breakdown. Anna and Jacob alongside with you, wrapping up the season. Jacob, it's been quite the season on Blue Jay Breakdown, and we've got the Big East tournament to talk about, and also the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, lots happened since the last time recorded. You've been flying all over the country. Tough to make schedules work to get here on the mics together, but yeah, it's season's over now and full speed ahead in the off season, so we have a lot to talk about.
All right, well, let's start with the Big East tournament in New York City. As Jacob mentioned, I was there. Biggest takeaways, Jacob, I want to talk about the role players stepping up and just what you saw throughout the 3 games that Creighton got to play.
Yeah, I think that's probably the most exciting part is Creighton made a run to the final and we're competing in that championship without Ryan Kalkbrenner and Stephen Ashworth just dominating. It was the other guys stepping up that allowed them to go that far and were the kind of stories of the tournament. Obviously, Jasen Green against UConn, what he did in that game, just offensively. In addition, obviously, he's been the 5th option most of the time he's out there, and then he really stepped up and showed he could do a little bit more than that. Maybe not consistently, but he was able to take advantage of everything that UConn gave him there, and that's what you need when you've got guys that teams game plan for and kind of shift their defenses and really focus on taking away. Those other guys have to be able to step up, and that's what we saw in the Big East tournament. Fedor having Zugic having his moments there. Ty Davis in the comeback, the double overtime win, coming up huge after Ashworth fouled out to kind of help carry them home in that one. Jackson McAndrew having his moments, showing he's not afraid of stepping up with the lights on. And so you saw all those guys kind of have their moments throughout the Big East tournament. And then some of that carried over into the NCAA tournament as well. So, and those are the guys that you expect to be back next year that you can build around. So it's good to see those young players kind of stepping up and having these moments late in the season as you head in the off season.
And I think to do it on a stage of Madison Square Garden, like you mentioned, all the lights are there. For them to step up, I think was huge. And I mean, I'll just touch on the championship day because that was the loudest I've ever heard a basketball arena in my entire life. Like, the St. John's fans have crawling out from every place in New York City for that team, and rightfully so, at least during the Big East tournament. But it was absolutely rocking. Creighton obviously hung in there. I think they just ran out of gas towards the end, and St. John's was deep. And kudos to them and what they do in second halves against teams. I don't understand it, but
I mean, team that can't shoot made 14 straight shots from the field. Obviously, they're getting to the rim some, but they're hitting contested jumpers. Like that was kind of like
game over.
This was meant to be. Like nobody was beating St. John's in that building on that day with the way they were playing in that game. So props to Creighton for getting to that point, and they put up a good fight. Just didn't quite have enough firepower to keep up.
All right, well, let's move on to the NCAA tournament. Number 9 seed for the Blue Jays facing the number 8 seed Louisville. 2 underseeded teams, in my opinion, especially
in Lexington, Kentucky.
In Lexington, Kentucky, an hour away. And it's funny because I was talking to Greg McDermott after the St. John's game, like, like, how is this going to prepare you? He's like, well, I hope we never have to face, an atmosphere like that in the NCAA tournament. I'm like, oh, yeah, you wouldn't. Why would you? Oh, well, Louisville gets put in Lexington an hour away, and that place was absolutely red. Creighton booed every single time a logo was put on the board. Like, everything was all towards Louisville, as, they hadn't been in the tournament in 6 years, but Creighton dominated.
And I think probably the biggest storyline from this is, and the difference in the game was just the game plan and preparation. Credit to Greg McDermott and his staff for getting Creighton ready to play in this one. Their execution level was so high. They got exactly what they wanted. They came out and missed their first 5 shots from 3. They were all good looks. And even they started going inside a little bit more and getting some buckets, and it's kind of feeling like, man, Creighton's getting everything they want every single time down the court. And if the shots start to fall, then look out, Louisville. And boy, did the shots start to fall. And that's kind of, we'll touch on that in a second here, but just in general, like Creighton's ability to generate good looks so consistently against what had been a really good defense. And then on the other end, Louisville's game plan against Creighton both defensively and offensively, just didn't seem like a team that was really familiar with what they were going up against. Like they did not do a good job of accounting for Ryan Kalkbrenner. They sent a lot of bodies his way defensively and kind of limited his impact, but that kind of allowed Creighton to get loose the guys around him. Stephen Ashworth and Jasen McAndrew, Creighton's best shooters, both got knocked down 3 threes apiece in the first half. They got plenty of clean looks. So their rotations out of their double teams, none of that were on point. They're doubling when they don't need to, when Kalkbrenner's down in threading place and leaving guys wide open. And on the other end, Creighton just made Louisville work for everything they got. You had Chucky Hepburn and Terrence Edwards Jr. put up some big numbers, but they had more shots than points. And that's what Creighton needed to do, is to make those guys inefficient, because they carry such a heavy load. And those guys, they just weren't able to generate good looks against Creighton's defense. So credit to Greg McDermott and his players for following the game plan, because it looked like Louisville didn't know what they were going up against.
And it's funny, though, because I asked McDermott about game planning for this team, and obviously on a short turnaround, he's like, well, I had my staff game plan for a lot of teams. Louisville wasn't one of them. Like, they had to turn around this game plan very quickly, because nobody thought Louisville was going to be an 8 seed.
Yeah. And so the players' ability to execute and to lock in on not only a great game plan, but again, the execution, whereas you had a lot of miscommunications, a lot of broken plays on Louisville's side. They just weren't able to match what Creighton did there. So just complete mismatch, because again, getting your team ready is part of coaching. So all of that falls under the coaching. I think this was a pretty big coaching mismatch with the way this game played out. And Pat Kelsey had a great season, really good hire for Louisville. He reinvigorated that program, was National Coach of the Year shortlist for a lot of people. And it just, I think, goes to show how good McDermott and his staff are. Because that was, and Creighton's so hard to game plan for on short prep, especially Ryan Kalkbrenner. If you haven't played against him, there aren't guys like him in the ACC that Louisville would have played before. So there were probably some things there they thought they could get away, and then you got out there and realized, oh no, like right away, Chucky Hepburn tried to throw up a lob when Kalkbrenner didn't bite at all and just like knocked it away easily. Then he tried to go up and score out the rim, and Kalkbrenner like spiked it into the ground. Those were both within the first few minutes. Like, okay, this guy's a little different than the guys that you faced before. So that was really impressive showing by Creighton. Obviously getting that thing up to 20 in the first half.
Jamiya Neal, 29 points. We haven't even touched on him yet.
Well, so talked about the missing the first 5 threes, and they got hot, hit their last 7 in the first half, went 9 for 11 after the 0 for 5 start, ended up making 11 as a team. And then Jamiya took over and did something that nobody has done since Dwayne Wade in 2003.
Good company.
25 plus points, 10 plus rebounds, 5 plus assists, and 65% shooting. Finished with 29 on 11-16 shooting, 12 rebounds, 6 assists. The only blemish was his free throw shooting, or that would have been a 30 piece there. Only went 5 for 9 at the line. But just phenomenal performance for a guy who said getting even one more game with this team would mean everything to him. With everything that he experienced this year, didn't think that he'd end up being as affected as he was by becoming a Blue Jay. He thought, it's a great basketball fit. Everything that came along with that, it kind of caught him by surprise. And it was really cool to see him have a moment like this with the midseason role change, the improvement he made, the trust that he gave into the coaches after realizing how much they cared for him and all those sorts of things. So pretty cool to see a guy like that come in here and have a performance on that stage.
Absolutely. Well, Creighton ran into a number 1 overall seed, Auburn, who could win the national championship this year, if I say so myself. 82-70 the final, but Jays did lead at halftime, 37-35. Just what were your main takeaways from that game?
Yeah, I mean, first 26 minutes in that game, back and forth. Nobody led by like more than 4 points. A bunch of game lead changes, ties. And Creighton had the lead, the 50-48 lead, about 4 minutes in the second half. And then Auburn just, to steal a phrase from Danny Hurley, Auburn showed their quality. They put together a 20-4 run, basically 2 10-0 runs, sandwiching back-to-back buckets from Kalkbrenner to pull away and to give themselves control of this game. Creighton went 6 minutes without scoring, and they continued to battle down the stretch. Like Auburn wasn't able to run away with it, but wasn't ever truly got all the way back into the game at that point. So yeah, it's just a really good team. You look at Creighton went in there, they limited Janai Broom to 8 points. They held Miles Kelly, who had 23 in the first round, hit 7 threes. He made 1 shot. So their 2 biggest threats, National Player of the Year or candidate and their leading scorer from the first round, kept those guys completely in check. But then you had Todd Pettiford, the freshman, come off the bench with 23, and then offensive rebounds, 19 second chance points was just too much for Creighton to overcome, despite playing pretty well in a lot of areas of the game. It just you could see the physical differences, the athleticism. It just went through that stretch there where Creighton couldn't get a bucket and Creighton couldn't get a stop, and Auburn was able to pull away there. So, but I mean, the first half, 9 threes Creighton hit again, just shooting lights out there. Couldn't really score inside the arc in the first half, but didn't matter because Ashworth and McAndrew and those guys were keeping them in the game. And so, yeah, it was a really fun game for long stretches, and Auburn just pulled away. I mean, they had a bunch of guys contributing in this one. Kalkbrenner finished with 18 points. Ashworth at 13 points, 8 assists. Jamiya 13 in his last game. All 3 of those guys did what they could. Yeah. Again, we talked about the future. Jasen with 12, hit 4 threes. Fedor Zugic came in, hit 2 threes, got to the line 6 times, made 4 of them, scored 10 points in 20 minutes. That's a guy that was looking a lot more comfortable down the stretch. So there's a lot of positives to take away. It's just unfortunate. And I think you look at these 2 games combined, and I think Creighton probably played as well. Like, everything for the most part came together for what Creighton needed to do to make a run. They shot 23 of 51. That's 45% from 3 in their 2 games. They had great offensive balance, where 4 to 5 guys in double figures in both games. I think McDermott and his staff, they got everything they could have out of this team, particularly after the Isaacs injury. The margin for error was just so slim. I think the big issue right now is the way they were playing. Any other draw, they could have made a run. The number 1 seeds are just so strong this season, just all 4 of them. You look at the metrics, there's a big gap between the number 1 seeds and basically everybody else, like bigger than we've seen in a while. And they just got stuck on that 8-9 line where you had to face a number 1 seed in the second round. Almost any other seed, I think they could have done. They could have gone even farther with the way they were playing. It's just the injuries, the illnesses, the kind of the lack of cohesiveness early on, the things when they were still figuring things out. They weren't able to get the big wins they needed in the non-conference. And then the Big East ended up not offering as much because the other teams also struggle in the non-conference. So the overall strength of the resume just wasn't there for Creighton to get off this seed line. And I think that ultimately is what doomed them from making another Sweet 16, Elite 8 type run. But credit to the players and coaches, because they were playing at a high level down the stretch. It's just, I think Auburn is that good. I
know. And I mean, being in that locker room after the loss, you felt like the sadness and the somberness, but I think you also felt a sense of pride because, I mean, this is a team that started 7-5 on the year. Yeah. There were questions if they were even going to make the tournament. They lose Pop Isaac, second leading scorer on the team. And I think they weren't at peace with losing, but I think they felt pride of saying, like, hey, we did do this. Best shot. We gave it our best shot. We faced number 1 Auburn, and we hung with them. We were right there with them, but it didn't end up, being our night. At the end of the day, it was Auburn's day that day. But yeah, I think lots to take away. And for the future, McAndrew, I think, is probably, turned even more heads if you hadn't been watching Creighton basketball all year long. Just his composure in those moments, I think, will serve him so well. And just the way he carried himself after the game and how he spoke about Steven and Ryan and what they meant to him, I think showed a lot of his leadership to come. But yeah, I think future's bright, but like you said, I think they just ran into a bad seed line, and I think that potential was kind of capped early on when they lost those non-conference games, and it's an unfortunate position to be in. But, I mean, they were in a position at one point in the game to pull it off, too. Yeah. So, like, you have to be proud of that as well.
Nope. Again, head-to-head with one of the best, and no reason to hang their head. And now they head in the offseason. Going to be busy one to get ready for to make another run next year.
That was one of the first things McDermott talked about. It was like, hey, portal opens on Monday. It's right back to work. There's no offseason truly in college basketball anymore.
Well, especially because he's operating a man down on his coaching staff right now with Ryan Miller taking over at Murray State as the head coach there.
Right. So positions to fill, not only in the coaching staff, but also on the floor. How do you replace Stephen Ashworth? How do you replace Ryan Kalkbrenner? Well, you don't, but there are ways in the transfer portal to get that. What are the biggest needs that this team needs to address over the offseason?
And largely the ones that you just named is the lead ball handler, the lead playmaker, point guard, and the big man. It's you lose players of their caliber, and there aren't ready-made replacements on the roster right now that are ready to step up and replace what those guys have done. So you want to maintain the level of competitiveness, you got to go to the portal for that type of stuff. And that's what we're going to see. I think we're going to see Creighton hit the backcourt and the front court, obviously, pretty hard. You feel pretty good about the returning core of the pieces that you've got. I think you've got some good role players, some good supporting cast. If you can like nail the portal additions and get the right guys in here. What you mentioned, McAndrew coming in, Fedor Zugic, what he showed down the stretch. I think he really started to turn it on over the last 7-8 games of the season, outside of the ankle injury sidelined him in the St. John's game. Jasen Green, the growth that he showed this season, kind of the Swiss Army knife piece that can play a few different roles for you there. And then you've got guys like Isaac Trout, who is a good role player, a nice piece of this thing. Ty Davis, just coming off a freshman, didn't play a ton, so he's a guy that's still kind of learning, waiting in the wings there. We did see already, as we record this on Wednesday, some portal movement for Creighton. Pop Isaacs and Mason Miller, both in the portal. I think neither one's a big surprise. Some rumors started to circulate about that before it happened. So he ended up getting 8 games out of him. So is what it is.
A Kansas win?
Yeah. No, it's pretty big.
He went out well as a Blue Jay.
But now so that means that's even more firepower in the backcourt that you have to replace. So you need probably 2 impact players in the backcourt, and you need an impact player at the 5 spot. And then I think you feel pretty good about your team. I know Owen Freeman from Iowa averaged about almost 17 a game as a sophomore this season, shooting over 60% from the field before a finger injury kind of ended his season, got surgery to address that, I believe. Shut it down after 19 games. He was the Big Ten Rookie of the Year last year. So it's a guy that obviously not Kalkbrenner. He's not a 7'1" defensive maestro, but is a guy that can be really effective, and visited Creighton, and I would anticipate them having a good shot at sealing that deal there. And then beyond that, their names are attached to a lot of players. We'll have to see kind of which ones they start to hone in on. Josh Dix is another one, another Iowa transfer with some local ties. He's from Council Bluffs. And I know Creighton was recruiting him coming out of high school until Paul Lusk left to Purdue. He was a lead recruiter there. So there's some familiarity there between Dix and the program, but he's going to have some really good options elsewhere after he was one of the most efficient players in the country this season for Iowa. Yeah. So plenty of other names that we'll see come across the radar, but those are a few of the ones that we've already seen some traction with early on.
Yeah. So lots of questions to answer over the offseason for the Blue Jays. Let's flip over to the women's side, talking about their NCAA tournament appearance. They also got put on that 8-9 game as the 9 seed facing Illinois in Austin, Texas. Just not the way we wanted this senior group to go out, Jacob.
No. And the kind of disappointment of lining on that line, because even if you did get that first win, what you're going to run into,
right.
Which is the same thing that Creighton ran into all season, and hadn't proved they were able to compete with those top 5 to 10 caliber teams. But unfortunately, unlike the men, they weren't able to even get through that first game, facing a tough Illinois team. And it's just unfortunate that it's one of those games where just nothing really seemed to click. They got themselves down, and then they were up 6-3 early on, and then Illinois hit them with a 19-4 run to take a 12-point lead early in the second quarter. And then Creighton never fully recovered. They cut it down to 5 at halftime, got it down to 2, like 3 different times in the third quarter, but Illinois managed to maintain the lead the rest of the way. And you're not going to win a game shooting 36% from the field, 27% from 3, and not getting to the line or in the paint very much either. So it's just one of those games where nothing was clicking for them offensively. Their shot makers weren't hitting shots. They didn't necessarily have anybody really step up in a big way outside of the stars to supplement them not shooting great. So just like you said, it's an unfortunate way for it to end, especially for these seniors to go out that way for everything they've accomplished. You were hoping for a better ending for their story at Creighton, but man, everything they've done over the last 4 or 5 years will never be forgotten by Creighton fans.
Yeah, winning his group, and I think Jim Flanery said it best afterwards of just talking about their impact beyond the stat sheet. Doesn't matter if they won a game in the tournament or won the championship, like the relationships that those girls built with each other, and also for the Omaha community too, of seeing Creighton basketball rise and seeing, you know, what can be possible. They truly raise the standards and they raise the expectations for years to come. And also those seniors didn't have to come back. Like I'm sure they could have gone elsewhere to different Power 4 school or whatever, and, you know, taken their talents to a Big 10 school or whatever. But they decided to give it one more run at Creighton, and obviously didn't end up the way they wanted to in the postseason. But I think, like you mentioned, so much to be proud of that senior group, and just the standard, the legacy that they're leaving behind. Just the way they went about their business, very professional, very graceful in everything that they did, played the game the right way. But yeah, I think it'll also be a huge offseason for Jim Flanery, because he's really going to have to look at who's returning and the players that he has left, and whether that's dipping into the portal or relying on developing your younger talent. I don't know what his plan is exactly, but I would imagine he's going to have to dip into that portal.
It's going to have to be both, yeah. So one more game with this group would have been great, but Illinois lost 65-48 to number 1 Texas on Monday. So there was probably, like the men, there was probably a ceiling on how far this team could have done anyway. If that makes you feel any better about it ending the way it did. But yeah, you lose 7 seniors, including those 5 that have contributed so much to this program over the years. Jim Flanery said, the best class in Creighton history, bar none. And what they've done to elevate the program, now it's up to Flanery and his staff to find a way to carry that momentum forward, to capitalize. And they're going to have to rely on going pretty young. So right now you've got Keani Locket and Kennedy Townsend coming back as rotation players. Yeah. And that's it. Keani obviously was the 5th starter with the other 4 seniors, and Kennedy was a source of offense off the bench, but neither was double-digit scorer. They were 2 role players on this team, and now those are your leaders heading into next year, heading into their senior year. And then beyond that, you've got Allison Heathcock and Elizabeth Gentry, who are freshmen this year. Heathcock played a little bit more than Gentry did, but neither one played significant minutes. So those are kind of unknowns going next. What your role are they going to play? Heathcock's 6'1" wing, Gentry is 6'3" center. So you at least got a little bit of size, and we'll see. They've got a year in the program under the belts now to build off of in this offseason. And that's it. You got 4 players coming back from this year's team. You've got a 5-player freshman class coming in. I think Flanery and his staff are really excited about these players, this group coming in. And they're probably going to have to rely on at least some of them early on to play significant roles. And who knows, maybe this could be the class that does what the one that just got done. They get on the court early, they take their lumps, and then they gain that experience and go on to have great careers here. But Ava Zedeker, 69th in ESPN's top 100, besting Audrey Faber, who was 72nd. Also, they got her out of Des Moines, where Zedeker's from, 5'11" point guard. You've got Neely Gessert and her sister Nora Gessert. Neely was 82nd, Nora 91st in the ESPN top 100 the last time I had looked. Neely, I think she's going to have a chance to play a significant role early, just with her ability to shoot. Her size is 6'1" guard, good length. I think she'll get out there, and they'll have to rely on her early with her versatility. Nora, a little bit more kind of a point guard, good size there. Again, she can play multiple positions, but more of the pass first, kind of do all the little things type of player to go with Neely, who's just a flamethrower. And then Kendall McGee, 5'10" guard out of Minnesota, and Avery Cooper, a 6'2" forward out of Sterling, Illinois. So that is the 5-player recruiting class coming in. That gets you to 9 players, which not enough to head in the season. I mean, Creighton, Jim Flanery likes to keep his rosters tight, and he only had carried 11 players this year, but 11 is still 2 more than 9.
Yep.
So we know they haven't invested heavily in the portal. Last year, they just added the 2 Division II players transferring up to kind of fill out their bench. I think in order to not take a big step back, they're probably going to have to find a way to go get more impact players this year. And probably you're looking at the front court in particular, because you need a little bit more size there. And because otherwise you're asking a lot of Gentry and Cooper coming in as young players to be able to hold the fort down there. And you have Heathcock having to guard up. You've got Gesser, whatever, like they've got a lot of firepower in the backcourt now to kind of round out the roster. So looking forward to seeing what Flanery and his staff can do to put together.
Flan's going to have to get in the portal.
Yeah. A lot of good young players, though, and I think you're going to see some of them play quite a bit early on.
I think so, too. But, yeah, what I won't doubt ever is what Jim Flanery will do with his program and what Coach McDermott will, like, they both have plans for their program, and every year it's always, oh, what are you going to do without this player? What are you going to do without this player? Well, life goes on, you move on, and then in 2 years we'll be asking, oh, what are we going to do without that player? So it's just a cycle of life. It's how it goes. Sad to see all these seniors go out. It's definitely an end of an era for Creighton basketball, both on the women's and the men's side. I mean, Kalkbrenner was there 5 years, right? So it's kind of he was the bookend to, that whole run with Alexander and Baylor and R2 and Kaluma and those guys. So it's kind of like the changing of guard, if you will, for both programs.
100%. And again, like you said, if anything, you feel comfortable because of the people that are in charge of these programs. If you're a Creighton fan, I'm sure there are a lot of questions. Everybody's kind of staying tuned to the news, trying to keep up to all the names that might be connected. But I think Creighton fans trust the coaches they have that are going to be making.
You can
these
sleep
decisions.
at night.
Yeah, their track record's pretty darn good.
Yeah, you'll be all right. Well, that'll do it from Blue Jay Breakdown. We'll talk to you next time, which I guess will be in a bit.
Yeah, maybe if something significant happens, we feel like we need to hop on at the end of the transfer cycle or whatever. But it's been fun talking Jays with you all season long.
Let's go.
Yep. We'll
keep you updated.
Yep.
We'll find out together. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for joining, and we'll see you next time.
A Hurrdat Sports Network production.